Well, the shooter is still at large. The FBI has arrested a couple of people. They ended up being the wrong people. They're now putting out an image asking for information about another person. I will show you that. But we still don't know who killed Charlie Kirk, who assassinated Charlie Kirk. There have been a lot of questions and circulating theories online. Let's break them down. Who killed Charlie Kirk? A trans activist, that is where many of the leads are looking to point to. Or was it Israel? Was it Ukraine? There are some questions here. But first, I want to show you what Donald Trump had to say. I don't think this is helpful at all, but this is what the president of the United States, the statement that he issued shortly after the death of Charlie, the assassination of Charlie Kirk.
It's a long past time for all Americans and the media to confront the fact that violence and murder are the tragic consequence of demonizing those with whom you disagree day after day, year after year, in the most hateful and despicable way possible. For years, those on the radical left have compared wonderful Americans like Charlie to Nazis and the world's worst mass murderers and criminals. This kind of rhetoric is directly responsible for the terrorism that we're seeing in our country today, and it must stop right now. My administration will find each and every one of those who contributed to this atrocity and to other political violence, including the organizations that fund it and support it, as well as those who go after our judges, law enforcement officials, and everyone else who brings order to our country. From the attack on my life in Butler, Pennsylvania last year, which killed a husband and father, to the attacks on ICE agents, to the vicious murder of a healthcare executive in the streets of New York, to the shooting of House Majority Leader Steve Scalise and 3 others, radical left political violence has hurt too many innocent people and taken too many lives.
I wish he wouldn't do this. I mean, a lot of people voted for him because they were fed up of the left doing exactly this. They were fed up of Democrats pointing the finger, demonizing the right, constantly calling them names, saying that calling them the radicals, saying it was them that was causing all the problems. People were really fed up with that. And Donald Trump was elected in order to really to reel back on this, to stop the politicization and the weaponization of various different organizations, governmental organizations. And yet here he is doing it, saying, rather than just having a message of we need to tone down the political, the rhetoric, the radical rhetoric on both sides. Instead of saying that, he just points at the left and says, we got to tone down the we got to tone down the rhetoric, you crazy radical leftists, and now we're coming for you. That is not helpful at all. In fact, we are reeling closer and closer to a civil war at this moment. This Charlie Kirk's assassination has put the country on edge. And I am seeing despicable behavior from both sides. That is what I'm seeing. Despicable behavior from both sides. I go to Blue Sky. I just wanted to check it out last night. What are the liberals saying about Charlie Kirk? Nothing good. All right. They all say, well, essentially the vibe was he got what he deserved. And, this is what happens when you spew falsehoods. And this is what happens when you lie. And this is what happens when you radicalize your audience. You're going to radicalize the other side and they're going to come and get you. I mean, the thinking by Democrats was disgusting. On the flip side, I've seen the same disgusting behavior coming from people on the right. I'm seeing people saying, I even saw a post on Twitter where they were saying to students of BYU, which is right there near where Charlie Kirk was killed, saying, if your teachers say anything about Charlie Kirk, out them. Let's record them. Let's drag these people out by the hair. Talking about just a very coming from a bunch of Mormons. Like, get it together, guys. You're supposed to be Christians, children of God, like all these things, and yet talking about dragging teachers out by the hair and not putting up with this anymore. I mean, just the radicalization, even from sweet Mormons, is beyond. We are at a tipping point. We've got to get it together as a country. And the radical rhetoric coming from both sides. Last night, I talked to family members that are true blue ultra Democrat, just they see red every time you mention Donald Trump's name. They are radicalized. They believe that people on the right are trying to destroy them, ruin their lives, take their rights away, ruin the country, just lock everybody in chains and reel us all back to the Handmaid's Tale. And on the right, you have people believing that radical leftists are trying to ruin the family. And you're both wrong. You're both wrong. That's the thing. You're both wrong. Just in your own family, I'm sure you have people of differing opinions. And do you really honestly think that people in your family, members of your family, some of your friends are just evil demons out to get you? This is the stuff that has to stop. And the president feeding into this because he's deflecting, many of us believe, because we don't think it was a radical leftist that actually killed Charlie Kirk. It's not really adding up if you actually put two and two together. But so many people with lizard brain want to actually just blame it on the left, blame it on trans activists. If you say that, then they're going to go for it. But I think a lot of them are bots online. I think the vast majority of people are not actually believing that it was a radical leftist. Most people believe it was a professional hit. It was an assassination done by a pro. And all roads lead to that at this point. Here is Fox News. I don't know who this is, to be honest with you, talking about what evidence they have, what leads they have.
And we all lost, no matter what side of the political aisle you're on, we lost something important in America today. But the case goes on. The investigation goes on. There's a lot of piecing of evidence together. We don't have a shooter tonight. We have a couple leads, a couple people that were released that probably aren't the shooter. There's a couple hot leads. There's a little bit of foreign intelligence.
What?
And I think over the next couple of days, we will learn a lot more. And hopefully we will bring to justice the evil person who did what they did to Charlie today.
Okay. What do you mean there's a little bit of foreign intelligence? Why would there be any foreign intelligence on this at all right now? Why would there be? This was a shooting that happened in the United States, especially if you're going to try to pin it on a trans activist, right? What sort of foreign intel and which foreign government is providing us with this intel? And why would they have intel on an event that happens in our own country? Are they spying on us? Are they here on the ground? How would they have any information about a potential American? So if you believe the narrative that it is a trans activist that killed Charlie Kirk, or a radical leftist, like what Donald Trump is saying, if you believe that, then that's an American, right? And this event happened in America, in Utah, in the middle of America, on American soil at an American university. Charlie Kirk was an American. Most everybody there, if not everybody, practically everybody there at this event was an American. So why the hell is there any foreign intel on this at all? We are being spied on, obviously. And he basically just admitted it. And the foreign intel that's coming in to lead us in more suspicious right there, that foreign intel would intervene and say, it was a trans activist that did this. Oh, and go into the woods, and I bet you're going to find a gun wrapped in a towel, and inside the gun are going to be these crazy anti-fascist and trans inscriptions writing on the gun. Is that not, does that just make you a little bit suspicious? Can we all just use our brains for just 2 seconds instead of thinking, oh, it must just be this trans activist? That is what they're trying to claim. By the way, going back to Donald Trump and him saying that radical leftists were sick of radical leftists and their violence, actually, historically, just sheer by the numbers, I'm just saying the numbers the way they are, sheer by the numbers, more political violence happens from the right than from the left. The left is usually... think about you when you think, see, does this even make sense? When you think about liberals, you're like, oh, these little pansy asses, they can't do anything. They just want to sit around and drink matcha tea and do yoga and talk about their pronouns. And then now you're thinking that they're a big violent group and they've all got guns, like they're the group that has guns, the group that says they don't want to have the guns. They're the ones with the guns suddenly. They're the ones who are violent. They're the ones. Yes, they are. There are some of that for sure. The political violence is happening on both sides, but sheer by the numbers, if you're just going to actually call it out, more of the violence has historically happened coming from the right than from the left. But that's neither here nor there. We really just have to de-radicalize and we're hyper, we've just become insane and we have to tone it down. Here's a bit. So let's get to some of the conspiracies here and why there's the thinking that this was more than just some trans activist. Watch this. This is some guy standing right behind Charlie, making these strange Strange hand signals coming from both of these guys. Let's play that again. Strange, almost looks like signaling. And then this guy almost looks like signaling. Let's watch it one more time. So people are pointing at this saying, who are these guys? What were they signaling? Who are they signaling? Were they working? Do you think that they were working with the trans activists? Is that what that looks like? These guys are in cahoots with the trans activist. But this is the information that makes us believe this was a trans activist. This is coming from Steven Crowder. And he put this out there. There's this is the image that he posted. And this image shows that, reading it, it says, this is like he says that this is internal messaging coming from law enforcement, okay? The internal messaging says that basically that they had found an older model imported Mauser bolt action rifle wrapped in a towel in a wooded area near the campus. The location of the firearm appears to match the suspect's route of travel. The spent cartridge was still chambered in addition to 3 unspent rounds. In the top-fed magazine, all cartridges have engraved wording on them expressing transgender and anti-fascist ideology. Okay, so that's where the whole thinking is. This was a trans person. Because, right, a trans person, because the last trans shooting we just had recently, there was trans inscription all over, the gun. And so if you were going to plot this and pin it on the trans community or pin it on radical leftists because you don't want to get caught for the real reason why you took the guy out, then yeah, you start inscribing things all over the gun. You would do that to try to throw them off the trail. But it's a little bit too perfect, right? This is the shooter that was spotted on the roof. You could see him in the red circle there. And, so clearly the person was from up above. This is some footage. So this is drone footage of the area where Charlie was shot, kind of the buildings, and you can kind of see down to where his tent was set up and where the shooter perched themselves in order to get this shot. One shot, one lethal shot, no other bullets fired, and the gunman runs and gets away. Somehow is able to get on this roof, hide, take a kill shot, one shot, and leave, and that's it. Not multiple shots like what happened at Butler with Trump. This is just one shot, one lethal shot. This is why it looks like a complete professional. This is also a map of the grounds. So then the FBI puts this out. They say, well, now we're looking for this guy. So they arrested 2 people. They let them go because they ended up they were like patsies essentially. And then they ended up now putting this out here saying, they want information on this guy. Like, do you have information on this person? They're not saying this person did it. They're just saying, do you have information on this person? I want to show you this. Some people are saying that Charlie Kirk some people are saying that he was wearing a bulletproof vest and that what they think happened was that the bullet hit the vest and then ricocheted up and hit his neck. But he was not wearing a bulletproof vest. And this video, there's images that sort of show it and prove it, but this video also proves that this is Charlie being whisked out. And if you look closely at the video, you will see, let me see if I can show you the exact spot, but you can actually see his bare skin. Let's see if I can, right there. You could see his bare skin as he's being carried out. His shirt has lifted up and it's soaked in blood. And he's being carried out to the SUV, which I guess, did they transport him to the hospital in this SUV? Is that, I thought he got transported. I would have thought an ambulance. I would have thought an ambulance was there, that EMTs were there. But this is showing that Charlie, there was some theories that he was shot out of a bulletproof vest and it ricocheted off, but he wasn't wearing a bulletproof vest. This is George Zinn. This is the guy that they originally arrested. They carried him away, and he was yelling this. Watch this. This is weird. He was yelling, "Shoot me, shoot me."
Shoot me! Shoot me! Was that you? We don't know if it's him or not.
Yeah, so that's weird. So they originally were hot on the trail of this guy, right, George Zinn, and there he is yelling, "Shoot me, shoot me," and he actually said that he'd shot Charlie. He was claiming he'd shot Charlie, but the police were overheard saying while they were carting him away, He claims he shot Charlie, but we're not sure if he really did. I mean, the police were skeptical, thinking he didn't actually shoot Charlie, but this guy was actually screaming that he did. There are theories. Now, Zinn, the last name Zinn, is a name that is of German origin, and there are quite a few Ashkenazi Jews that have the last name Zinn. So there's theories out there that he was acting as a decoy, that if this plot was actually carried out by Mossad or Israel or, special ops, pro-Israel forces, that they got this guy roped in to be a distraction so that the shooter could get away. And, if he happens to be there's no real confirmation of that, but I did look into the last name, Zinn. I'd heard online rumblings that he was Ashkenazi Jewish, looked up the name, and it certainly is connected, but there's no evidence at this point that he is Jewish in any way. And, of course, if he is, that certainly adds to this, why was he acting so bizarre and strange? Was he being deployed basically to act as a decoy so that the shooter could get away? Also, what was really strange and what points to Israel maybe being involved in this whole thing, that Charlie Kirk maybe was actually targeted by Israel and not some crazy trans activist, is that Benjamin Netanyahu tweeted about him twice. But the second time that he tweeted, so the first time he says praying for Charlie Kirk, it's weird he would even say that. This is, again, American politics, he does know about Charlie Kirk, of course. He's paying attention to American influencers and whatnot. But the weirdest part was Benjamin Netanyahu tweeting this one out. We cut off the timestamp on this, but this was actually tweeted out before mainstream media had the reports coming out at the same time Netanyahu tweeted this. Him saying Charlie Kirk was murdered for speaking the truth and defending freedom, a lion-hearted friend of Israel. He fought the lies and stood tall for Judeo-Christian civilization. I spoke to him only 2 weeks ago and invited him to Israel. Sadly, that visit will not take place. We lost an incredible human being. His boundless pride in America and his valiant belief in free speech will leave a lasting impact. Rest in peace, Charlie Kirk. He tweets this out before anyone in the media really was reporting that Charlie had been killed. It's like he had somebody in the hospital giving him information, which if you did an assassination, you would have somebody on the ground, you'd have people watching to see what the effects were of your assassination attempt, whether or not you actually succeeded or if it was just an attempt. And so it's odd that the prime minister of Israel would tweet this out. The reason why he had invited Charlie, now this is why people suspect Israel maybe was behind this, because Charlie Kirk has a massive audience, massive audience. Charlie Kirk was 31 years old. His audience was young, the very generation that is very against Israel. And Charlie Kirk being a conservative and having a conservative audience, that was the audience that Israel really needs to keep on the side of Israel, and they're losing them fast. And Charlie Kirk, who had been very pro-Israel, had started to question things over the last few weeks and only over the last few weeks. And that's been sounding the alarm bells in the pro-Israel crowd. And that is why I suspect Benjamin Netanyahu just invited him to Israel only a couple of weeks ago to basically bring him back into Israel and set him straight. But I'd heard Charlie declined the visit, declined his obligatory pilgrimage to Israel. And there were, so I just want to play, this is Charlie being more skeptical of Israel.
Epstein, with his little friend Ghislaine and Ghislaine's father, Robert Maxwell, who was obviously a spy of the Israeli intelligence agencies, but there was something else going on here. Epstein was not some sort of whiz kid hedge fund manager. Epstein was playing a part. Epstein was a LARPer. Epstein was cast for a specific role, and he played it really well. The sweatpants and the Harvard jacket, the kind of disheveled hair, looking as if he was so smart and above the clouds that he was doing advanced mathematic equations on the back of napkins. But if you actually go into some of the videos of people that met with Epstein at the time, they said he was awfully unimpressive when it came to finance and markets and economics. It's nothing new that if you're in the intel agencies, you want to try and get as much blackmail on powerful people as possible. Easy, not hard. And this is no longer just speculation. First of all, the evidence that shows that Epstein was a creation of either Mossad, Israeli intelligence, American intelligence, Saudi intelligence, or maybe he was just a hired gun. Maybe he was just the guy that countries would go to and park a couple $100 million and say, hey, can you get one of the members of the royal family with a 13-year-old so we can get them to do what we want to do? Members of Congress are actively being blackmailed. The Epstein playbook is being used on a daily basis. Jeffrey Epstein was not a financier. He was not a hedge fund manager. Jeffrey Epstein was a key player in a multi-decade blackmail operation against the most powerful people on the planet. Epstein.
So you're not supposed to be saying that, you know, especially if you're on Team Trump or Team Israel, then you're not supposed to be pointing this out. He also was wanting the Epstein files.
We as the American people deserve to have every Epstein file released with no redactions whatsoever, period. Correct. They got to make it right. And we, the American people, ran on transparency. We deserve to see the entire client list. Yeah. Every document the government has regarding the Epstein files, we, the American people, should have on an easy-to-access website immediately, in a very, very quick fashion. I'm pushing for that both privately and publicly, just so you know. Yeah. Secondly, there probably are a lot of destroyed documents. I think.
Okay, so, and icing on the cake here, again, we cut off the timestamp on this was actually August 25th. So this was a couple of weeks ago. Harrison Smith says, I'm not going to name names, but I was told by someone close to Charlie Kirk that Charlie thinks Israel will kill him if he turns against them. And that was tweeted out August 25th. So the leads that Israel is behind this, you know, you've got a gunman that was able to get away, obviously highly trained. Some people say, well, the shot was easy. Not when you're high on adrenaline in the middle of a crowd. This takes an expert. This takes somebody very skilled and skilled to get away. Had patsies in the crowd, two guys that they thought were the actual shooter who ended up not being the shooter. How do you have those kinds of decoys in the crowd if this is not some sort of an operation? And then you've got quickly a gun recovered with radical leftist scribblings on it. So we're just pointing this to the left rather than a trans activist would have just shot into the crowd and shot as many people as they could have. That has been the MO. The radical trans shooters that have been shooting up schools have been shooting up they've been shooting crowds. There was a giant crowd there. They would have just shot into the crowd. This is not part of the trans shooter MO, but so many people want to believe that because it's just easy rather than believing that, yeah, you know, the enemy's amongst us and we've been giving them money and weapons and helping them commit a genocide. And they've been happy to off children and journalists and anybody that gets in their way. And if Charlie Kirk is starting to change his tune, a guy that had been staunchly pro-Israel and suddenly starting to question things, and then he just recently went on Megyn Kelly's show and was complaining with her that, hey, you know, once we ask one question or ask one, you know, maybe lob one criticism, we get totally eviscerated and beat up by the pro-Israel crowd. They're calling us traitors. They're threatening our lives. Like, this is what he was going through just for questioning or just for saying, I think Epstein was a Mossad op and that they blackmailed our politicians. So the line of, you know, who benefits the most is mostly Israel on this. They didn't like him switching and leading his entire base of millions of youth who they're already fragile with in a direction they don't want, further taking them away from the Israeli cause. There's another option, however. It could have been Ukraine. The Ukrainians had recently put him on the list. This is them, you know, putting him on the list for their kill list. They have a notorious kill list that they've had for a long time. And so it's possible that the Ukrainians, they put out the hit. This is kind of what they said about Trump, the second assassination attempt, the guy that they had gotten that, you know, he was a pro-Ukraine guy. And so I think they're trying to tie that into this. But none of that really adds up. I mean, Charlie Kirk has been speaking out against Russia and Ukraine. You know, he's taken the same stance on that war for years now. Nothing has changed. That doesn't make him dangerous. His audience was never going to change their mind on that. The danger with Charlie was him shifting and flipping when it comes to Israel. That is really what it flips. So my bet is, you know, look, this is all speculation at this point, but my bet is the one that has the most to gain and who has the sophistication to pull this off and who has ties into our law enforcement, deep ties into our law enforcement to be able to plant evidence like guns with trans inscriptions all over it, whatever that means. My bet would be on Israel.